Here we are at the beginning of Family Guy. Well, technically, this isn't actually the beginning. You see, back in 1997, the year I was born, Seth MacFarlane would release two animated shorts by the name of Larry and Steve. These shorts were essentially a Family Guy prototype, except it was for kids instead of adults or teens. Larry would eventually become Peter, and Steve would eventually become Brian. After this, the rest of the family just kind of fell into place, and a pilot was made. The Unaired Pilot is basically the exact same as the one that they did air, of course with a few minor changes, and about half of the time. You might want me to review these three things that I mentioned. Well, I'm not going to. The Larry and Steve shorts are good, sure, but nothing I'd call spectacular. And as for the Unaired Pilot, well, as I said, it is very identical to the one that aired, so I don't really see a reason in taking a look at it. The episode we will be looking at today is the aired pilot, Death Has a Shadow, which, no, doesn't actually have to do with the character Death. That's not until season 2. I'm all about first impressions in these shows, so let's see if Family Guy's first impression was well or garbage. The problem when reviewing a pilot is you really have nothing to compare it to. You just kind of have to go off the basics, about writing and comedy or whatever else the subject matter may be. With that said, though, I would say that this pilot is above average. There are some really legitimately funny and clever jokes that actually made me laugh. The animation is a bit odd, but that is to be expected in Season 1, especially in a pilot. However, I do feel as though the bodies here have more movement and feels a bit more realistic when compared to modern Family Guy's stiff animation. Usually I would go over to the plots play by play, but I'm not going to do that here. Instead, I'll give a quick summary of the plot. Peter goes to a party with the guys and promises Lois that he won't drink. He does end up drinking, which causes him to lose his job. Peter tells the rest of the family besides Lois and goes through many jobs. He keeps getting fired and files for welfare. The welfare place gives him an overpriced check each month by mistake. Peter accepts this check, which is, of course, insurance fraud. The family enjoys being rich until Lois finds out, and she's pissed. To make amends with Lois, Peter returns the money, which gets him caught and put in court. Lois forgives him, and the judge puts everything back to normal because of Stewie's mind control device. And the only thing I left out was Brian. In this episode, Peter constantly goes to Brian whenever he needs advice, and this works for many reasons. The main reason being is because people actually do tell their dogs whenever they have problems. The only difference here is Brian can actually reply. Whether that is a joke or not, I'm not too sure, but I do know that it is clever for a character. The rest of the family are what you expect in this episode. Lois is a nag, Stewie tries to kill her, and Meg and Chris are just basic teenagers. Oh, and the first line in this episode is Lois being nice to Meg. How ironic. Well, actually, that's the first line after the intro. The first true line of Family Guy is by Jane Brady on the Griffin's TV. And no, I'm not kidding. The first joke ever in Family Guy was a cutaway gag, so I suppose I should talk about them. In this episode, the cutaway gags are short and actually funny, which is the way the show should have kept them. This is just a theory, but this show is structured very similar to The Simpsons, obviously being another family sitcom. I feel as though the cutaway gags are in the show to make it stand out more, other than, using real skin colors. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of them, and I'm glad American Dad doesn't have them, but I can't understand them, and don't mind the short and sweet ones like here. With all of this said, I'm giving each episode of Family Guy I review a bad, okay, or good rating for both the story and comedy. Death Has a Shadow, I'm giving a good rating in both categories. Also, thank you guys for watching.